That's what I call a chilly performance from the boys. Well done. Well played from pretty much everybody on the pitch yet again. They were here for it. I was here for it, and that was fun. But it wasn't just a normal clattering of Real Betis, because there is a lot to talk about. I think this has shown us some like insightful tactical stuff, but also just player profile wise things to discuss going forward for this team. So we're gonna get into that right now. Obviously, we won 5-1. Arguably, it could have been like, I mean, it's not arguably, but it could have been like 7-1, but these goals were the slightest bit offside. And when I say the slightest, it's actually ridiculous. I'll throw the picture on screen right here. It was that close, but whatever. Offside's offside. That's how it works now. We got to deal with that. Not the only cold performance today. Koundé could have had 2, which would have been sick, and Lamine could have had something like 2 goals and 3 assists if all this stuff wasn't called offside, but it ended up just being 1 goal and 1 assist, I believe. Yes, he could have had a second assist, but it deflected off one of the Real Betis players. It's a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. Overall, great game by pretty much everyone on this pitch, which is surprising because there's a lot of guys on the pitch for Barcelona that you wouldn't expect it necessarily from, or at least the way they played. To start off, the thing most surprising to me was that the team didn't have a striker. They were set up today to play without Lewandowski or Ferran Torres or Pau Victor, with Dani Olmo seemingly playing as that, striker, and then just Gavi behind him, Lamine on the right, Rafinha on the left, more of a normal setup there. And there was so much rotation around. It seemed to work very well. Obviously, we created so many chances, scored a ton of goals, and just it worked so incredibly well. Real Betis did not have an answer for it. And there were a few times where maybe Dani Olmo wasn't filling that position the way a striker would, or we didn't have the aerial threat that we could. But against Betis, they're not the most physically dominant team. But that's not like the only bright point. But we'll get to the player ratings now, go through all of it, because I'm excited to actually get into it today. Iñaki Peña, great. Made one really good save against none other than Vitor Roque, who, we'll rate him at the end. And I think Iñaki Peña had a really good game, was like trigger ready to come out of his box. And he did it when it needed to. It worked pretty well. We won the game. Obviously, he ended up conceding. You could have probably asked some questions from him on the pen. Pens are a little bit of a crapshoot, though, so I don't really hold him too liable for that. Then we get to the back line, where our boy Gerard Martin had a class game today. Like, I am not the biggest fan of his. I know you all aren't. But, hey, performed. Like, he did his job a couple times, but didn't really put any good crosses in, but defended okay. Filled the position well. I think a 7 is more than fair for the way he played. You could probably even give him more than that. At center back, I think Cubarsí was also very good possessionally and defensively, holding that high line well with Araujo. They clearly have a very good understanding too. They've played together a lot before. It should make sense that it happened, but it's nice to see it still there. I think a 7.5, 8 is fair for him. The same for Araujo. I'm going to give Araujo an 8 because I just think he was that good. Made a couple crunching tackles. Wasn't the most phenomenal on the ball, but did a lot of more ball progression, like progressive carries with the ball up the pitch, which is something you don't necessarily see as much from Cubarsí and Inigo. So that's pretty cool to see. But yeah, it was just pretty solid in possession and fantastic out of it. Defensively, really solid. I think he'll be incredibly important in the big battles that we will have coming up in the Champions League. Yeah, and just having more depth there is substantial. And then we get over to Koundé, who I think it's unfortunate, man, that he didn't get 2 goals. Again, I showed you the offside pick. I'll put it here. It's that close. It's literally his toe. Great game either way. Great goal, almost great second goal. Really good overlapping runs and defensive work from him. I think an 8 is very fair. You could probably argue more, but he's more of like, he is an off the ball support offensively, where, somebody like Ronaldo or Trent Alexander-Arnold will play big balls in. Koundé is really, really good at making those runs, or at least today he was. Right on his goal, he did a dummy of the ball, allowing it to get over to Lamine. Great pass from Pedri. Nice voice crack from me. And then Lamine was able to find him again, and Koundé put a really good strike on it. Great goal. Moving to the middle of the pitch, we're going to start with Frenkie de Jong, because I think he was really good. And I'm excited to say that because he also played as, honestly, a little bit of a single pivot. In possession, he was a lone pivot, coming between the center backs, moving the ball up the pitch, the same way he played at Ajax, kind of, the same way that I think will be the best place for him to be, because that's where he's most comfortable. That's what he played growing up in the Netherlands. That's where he's used to being, not as a number 10. And out of possession, he did have a little bit more support defensively. It looked like, in theory, they're supposed to have a double pivot out of possession or defensively. It didn't really come to play that much because they were so forward a lot, but De Jong also put in a couple good tackles, was actually stepping in there, and it was better possessionally, not wild with his progressive runs, becoming more of the player we are used to seeing. And I'm also going to link the video I made most recently on Frenkie de Jong. If you haven't watched that, I think it's important too, because it'll give you a better understanding of the tactical position that works best for him and where I think he can affect the play going forward and where I think he could fit. Pedri and Gavi, we'll do them individually. Pedri, I think, was brilliant, man. His vision on the ball, his defensive work rate, everything. Great player. And everyone forward from here was phenomenal today. Easy 8.5 for Pedri. I'm going to give 8 for Frankie. I'm going to give an 8.5 to Gavi. Gavi was fantastic. That goal was beautiful. Classic Barcelona 1-2-1 play. Really, really, really well done. Gavi had a game today. 8.5 for him. Rafinha, I'm going to give him an 8.5 as well. I think he was wonderful, making a lot of runs and behind. I think he was less good than Dani Olmo and Lamine, who I'll probably give my man of the match to Dani Olmo, because I thought like the balls he was playing in behind were ridiculous. He was finding players like nobody's business, and I think he got, 2 assists today? Let's see. And just 2 assists today, but yeah, fantastic work from Dani Olmo today. Really well done. I think a 9 for him is fair, and a 9 for Lamine is fair as well. Lamine was ridiculous. He was cooking in possession, and he was immediately going after it from the jump. Literally from the first minute, he was dribbling at people, trying to create things. Could have easily had 2 goals and 3 assists. You know what? I'm going to give him the man of the match. You could give him to either one of them, but I think those 2 guys were the bright spots on the pitch today for Barcelona. Truly, truly special players. And Danny played as a striker. That's the setup it was. It was 4-3-3 with Dani Olmo as, in theory, the striker, the number 9, and then, normal setup after that where Gavi's below him, Pedri and Frankie are deeper, but Frankie's deeper than that. Pedri is the middle midfielder. Danny was like all over the place. He wasn't just playing a striker. Lewandowski rotates a lot, or he's very flexible in his positioning, but Danny was all over the place, and Pedri moved up there a little bit. Gavi moved up there more. Lamine moved very central, and so did Rafinha, and that's very cool to see that can work with the side. That gives them another factor to go up against teams not necessarily needing Lewandowski to be in there, and still obviously being able to create and score lots of goals. Right, and then we'll get into the subs before we get into Vitor Roque, because I think that's an interesting conversation to have. I think Eric Garcia was fine. He's not the best center back. I think that's why we really haven't seen him at center back, but throughout the next few games, he's going to have to play there because Inigo Martinez and Christensen are still out. I think Christensen will be back against Getafe on Saturday, but he won't get a full 90 yet, and so Eric Garcia is going to have to play there, and he was fine. I think his 6.5 is fine because he did his job there decently. He's good in possession, does his job. Ferran Torres scored a goal, and I thought he was pretty good. He's usually pretty good as a sub. That's where he's excelled the most throughout his career, or from my experience remembering him as a player at Barcelona. He never has lit it up as a starter. When he subs himself on, he does pretty well. So today he was good, linked up pretty well, played on that left side, so maybe Hansi Flick's trying to find a solution for the left winger that's not named Marcus Rashford, and that's an interesting conversation to have because I don't know how much better Rashford is than Ferran Torres right now, which is a weird thing to say, but I think that's just the reality of the 2 players right now. And it's a sad day for our Ansu Fati, but I think he's going to leave Barcelona. I think he's been left out of the match day squad for the 3rd game in a row, and I believe Hansi Flick is clearly trying to make a statement that he is not in form enough for Barcelona right now. So, it's sad. It is what it is, but I think his time at Barca is over. He doesn't seem to want to leave, but if they're pushing him out, he should go play football. So hopefully he finds a home that fits well for him. And it's just going to be on loan probably, but hey, that'll open up some wage space for Barca to do something in theory during this window. Then Fermin Lopez was good attacking wise in possession and ran pretty well. I'll give him and Ferran Torres. I'll give Ferran a 7.5, Fermin a 7. Pau Victor, I didn't see a ton from him. He didn't get a ton of play out, neither did Pablo Torre, although I think Pablo Torre was pretty good. So I'll give Pablo Torre a 6.5, Val Victor a 6.5 as well, because I think they just performed decently. And the whole team overall, it was really well done, flowed well together, never really seemed like they were in trouble. And even if they were, you had like a confidence in their defensive work that they could figure it out, and they did. This team is in good form right now. I guess January is the new October. We just have to hope that February is not the new November. But that brings us to Vitor Roque, right? Our loanee currently playing for Real Betis at striker. I think he played the full 90 today. Usually he doesn't play 90 minutes, so I think that's a good sign. They also didn't have Chimi Avila in the lineup. I don't know if he's out injured or why, but I'm happy that he got minutes, and he looked pretty good today. He fought well with Araujo, which is not an easy thing to do, especially when you're 5 inches shorter than Araujo. He did the same thing against Eric Garcia and did better, but he held up the ball okay, created okay, and he did miss a chance, but it was more of a really good save from Iñaki Peña than a miss by him. He had a couple other chances, but it wasn't a terrible job from him. Maybe missed a header earlier in the match, but I think it's a pretty good performance from him. He looks decent at striker. He's still a very raw product. Remember, I think he's turning 20 in a couple weeks, so he's still very young, but I think with Barcelona also looking to potentially sign a striker in the summer, I don't know where his future is at Barcelona. Same for Pau Vitor. I don't know where his future is, or Ferran Torres, really. Signings are coming in both positions, so in left wing and striker position. So who knows where those guys are going to play out. But all I know is this team is coming into form again. They are finishing well, and they are playing well, and they're comfortable. And they're not only comfortable or defending okay because of the high line anymore. I think the quality of their defending skills has gotten back to the level, if not exceeded the level, of earlier in the season. And yes, this is only a 2-match sample size. That's not a ton to really go off of, but Real Betis and Real Madrid aren't necessarily the easiest battles, and they did well today, especially, we've lost points to Betis earlier this season. So I'm happy with the way they did today. You guys should be as well. Getafe on Saturday. I'll see you guys there. And if you haven't yet, go watch the video on the main channel about Frankie de Jong. It gets a little bit into his situation and his historical positioning, where I think which is something I think is important to know. Also, thank God Araujo is staying. I know I posted that video on the second channel yesterday complaining about it, and then 12 hours later he resigned. So maybe there's a Robbie Lou jinx. So whenever something bad happens to this club, I'm just going to have to make a video on it now, and maybe it'll immediately change everything right after. We'll see.